Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a profoundly significant prophetic sign and an impending final judgment, drawing straight from a very specific ancient text. And you know what's genuinely fascinating about this source material is its underlying structure. It relies on a brilliant rule of three as a structural backbone to deliver its warning. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. So let's map out exactly how this message is constructed, piece by piece.
One will be taken along and the other abandoned. Wow. Talk about a dramatic cold open, right? This quote from Matthew chapter 24, verse 40, sets incredibly high stakes right from the jump. It immediately introduces this stark binary mystery. Who is the one being taken and who is being abandoned? Keep this opening contrast in the back of your mind as we go, because it's the ultimate destination of everything we're about to unpack.
Okay, let's dive into this. The source text follows up that dramatic opening by framing our current era as a climactic time. Now, a climax isn't just any random point in a story. It's the exact moment where all the building tension finally breaks. According to the text, the event making our current time so climactic is that very soon, Jesus will judge every living person. And we're not just talking about judging whole nations here, but literally every single living individual. So you might be wondering, if there's a climactic judgment coming, how would anyone actually know? Well, the text explains that Jesus gave his disciples a two-part prophetic sign. First, it's a sign of his invisible presence. Actually, think about that for a second. Signs are usually something you can physically see, right? It's a bit of a paradox, pointing to something entirely unseen. Second, it marks the conclusion of the system of things, basically the absolute end of the current era. This twofold sign acts as the giant umbrella for the entire time period, leading right up to the final judgment. Let's move along and see how this builds. This prophecy isn't just some isolated quote hanging out on its own, it's meticulously mapped out across historical records. The primary account is right there in the book of Matthew, chapters 24 and 25, but it's completely corroborated by parallel accounts in Mark chapter 13 and Luke chapter 21. Finding the exact same details embedded across multiple ancient documents really reinforces the foundational weight of this prophetic sign.
Right, so we have the high stakes, we have the prophetic sign, and we have the historical records. But how is the practical meaning actually conveyed to us? Well, the text tells us Jesus used narrative, specifically 3 parables. Remember that rule of 3 structure we talked about at the very beginning? These aren't just quaint little stories. The source presents them as highly targeted warnings designed to guide human behavior during this climactic time.
And here is that specific trio of warnings: the parables of the sheep and the goats, the discreet and the foolish virgins, and the talents. Each parable approaches the impending judgment from a slightly different angle. Let's break down the underlying themes of each one of these, shall we?
First up is the parable of the sheep and the goats. The text presents a ridiculously stark dichotomy here. There is absolutely no middle ground. Much like our opening quote about one being taken and the other abandoned, this parable represents the final, binary judgment of every living person. When the climactic time reaches its absolute peak, the text asserts you are in one category or the other. It's a complete line in the sand.
And this brilliantly illustrates the second parable, which looks at the discreet versus the foolish virgins. The contrast here is absolute. Being discreet implies careful planning and being totally awake to the realities of the time. On the flip side, being foolish implies a total failure to recognize the urgency of the prophetic sign. It really highlights the required state of readiness during Jesus' invisible presence.
Finally, we hit the third warning, the parable of the talents. If the first parable establishes a divided judgment, and the second emphasizes staying vigilant, this third one focuses entirely on action. The talents represent real responsibilities handed down before the judgment hits. Together, these 3 parables form a complete, practical framework for preparation.
So the crucial point is, well, let's synthesize the ultimate takeaway from our source text today. We are living in a climactic time. It's marked by a 2-part prophetic sign, and we are guided by 3 distinct parables of warning. But the most crucial takeaway from all of this? Behavior affects judgment. The source explicitly links the lessons in these parables to the idea that a person's everyday behavior directly dictates their final outcome. Which brings us to a final, profound question for you to ponder. How will your behavior affect the way you will be judged? We started this explainer with the mystery of who is taken and who is abandoned. Through the sign of the times and those 3 parables, the text makes a compelling argument that the answer isn't just random chance. No way. Your actions and your preparation are the very metrics of that final judgment. Based on the warnings provided in this ancient text,
How is your current behavior shaping your ultimate outcome?
For more information, please visit jw.org. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and press the bell icon to get the notification for new videos.